Under the fiery skies of Kruger National Park, the ground seemed to burn beneath the scorching heat of the South African savanna. Amidst the vast expanse, a solitary figure lay motionless on the parched, golden grass. It was Nala. If 10 years ago her roar was the law that struck fear into every creature, today she was merely a relic of a fated empire. Nala was no longer a fierce hunter, but a soul trapped within her own exhausted body. Her ribs, jutting out beneath wrinkled skin, told the story of prolonged days of hunger. But the most painful part was not her emaciation. It was her eyes. Once two amber flames capable of freezing prey from a distance, they were now covered by a milky white film of darkness. Nala was completely blind. She lay there, not resting in peace, but waiting for the inevitable amidst the harshness of nature. In the wild, weakness is an invitation to death. However, the savanna was about to write an astonishing final chapter, a moment that transcended all ordinary biological laws. This is not just a story about the death of a creature, but about dignity and a strange kind of compassion born between sworn enemies. You are about to witness an encounter that even the most veteran rangers find hard to explain. Jack, a ranger who had spent over a decade on the dusty roads of Kruger, slowly brought his Land Rover to a halt under the shade of an old acacia tree. He turned off the engine. In the savanna scrub, silence is never empty. It is often a warning. Through his binoculars, Jack recognized Nala. He had known this lioness since she was a playful cub. Watch her grow, lead 3 generations of cubs, and survive hundreds of life and death battles. Seeing Nala lying there, exposed to the blistering midday sun, Jack felt a surge of sorrow in his chest. For a lion, blindness is a painful death sentence, and the savanna's scavenger army had already caught the scent of the end. From the tall, sun-baked grass, dark shadows began to move. It wasn't a chaotic mob, but a commando unit of 6 hyenas. They didn't rush in or attack immediately. Instead, they moved with a chilling patience, a cunning calculation. In many people's minds, hyenas are villains, scavengers with haunting, mocking laughs. But here, in this moment, they were the enforcers of nature's harsh laws. They circled Nala, their hunched backs and powerful jaws silhouetted against the heat haze rising from the ground. Jack gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. He knew the non-interference rule by heart. It was the golden rule of the national park. Let nature take its course. If humans interfere with the death of an old lion, they rob other creatures of a meal and disrupt the ecosystem's balance. But Jack's heart was waging a war against his training. How could he sit still and watch a legend, an old friend, be torn apart when she couldn't even see which direction the enemy was coming from? The hyena pack closed the gap to 3 meters, then 1. The youngest hyena, eager to prove itself, let out a small cackle, a sound that usually signaled the start of a bloody feast. Nala felt the vibration of the ground beneath her. She couldn't see the 6 pairs of eyes fixed on her throat, but her keen sense of smell told her that death was at her doorstep. This is where most nature stories would end in a scene of dust and red blood. The air grew thick, the tension suffocating. Jack reached for the radio, his thumb on the button, torn between his duty as a protector and the helplessness of a witness. He held his breath, waiting for one last roar or a fatal bite that would end it all. Amidst the thick atmosphere of death, the unthinkable happened. Nala, despite her depleted vitality, did not tremble or cower. Instead, with a Herculean effort, she took a deep breath, her lungs wheezing heavily but powerfully. She began to steel herself, forcing her weary joints to work one last time. Nala stood up. It was a slow, painful, yet majestic movement. She stood tall on 4 trembling legs, craning her thin neck until she reached the full height of a ruler. Though her eyes were completely out of focus, Nala turned her blank but steely face directly toward the lead hyena. It was a battle of wills between a fading legend and a pack of hunters in their prime. Nala didn't let out a single roar. she chose silence. But that silence carried the weight of 15 years of reigning over the savannah. She did not choose to surrender through fear, but by accepting death in the posture of a queen. The lead hyena, a large female with a face scarred by many battles, suddenly froze. Her ears flattened back, a sign of confusion rather than aggression. She was only inches away from Nala's throat. Normally, a blind and weak animal would be brought down in seconds. Yet, there was a strange aura emanating from this lioness, something that transcended the logic of predators. Nala stood there, motionless, like an ancient golden statue amidst a sea of gray shadows. Jack watched the entire scene through his binoculars, his own breath hitched. He realized he wasn't witnessing a hunt. He was witnessing an acknowledgement. The hyenas didn't attack because the prey before them didn't act like prey at all. There was no scent of fear on Nala, only the scent of a great life reaching its conclusion. The lead hyena stepped a bit closer, her nose twitching in the air, deeply inhaling Nala's scent. The scent of 1,000 hunts, the scent of old age, and the scent of the Kruger land itself. For one long minute, the world seemed to stop spinning. Then, with a low growl in her throat that sounded like a sigh of recognition, the lead hyena turned her head away. She emitted a short yip to call the pack and began to trot away toward the distant scrub. The other 5 looked at each other in confusion, but then followed suit, disappearing into the evening shadows, leaving the queen alone in sacred silence. They had refused a free meal in exchange for preserving the dignity of a great rival. It was a silent salute, a cross-species moment of respect that Jack knew he would never forget for the rest of his life. As the silhouettes of the hyenas finally vanished behind the acacia trees, the extreme tension in the air dissipated, leaving a heartbreaking stillness. Nala, having used her last bit of strength to assert her dignity, could no longer maintain her stance. Her legs buckled, and her great body collapsed onto the ground, her breath ragged like a candle flickering in the wind. Jack sat in silence. He knew he had just witnessed a miracle of compassion in the wild, but he also knew the grim truth. The hyena's mercy had only bought Nala a few more hours. Without intervention, the scorching heat and dehydration would finish her life painfully right there. Jack looked at the dashboard of his Jeep. The outside temperature had hit 40 degrees Celsius. He remembered all the years he had spent protecting this land. He had seen the laws of nature operate cruelly and fairly. But today, looking at Nala lying there, her blind eyes turned hopelessly toward the sun, Jack felt a deep connection that transcended all rules. Nala wasn't just a lion individual. She was a symbol of the Savanna spirit, a mother who had spent her life keeping this ecosystem in balance. To leave her to die in the dust after her enemies had chosen to spare her seemed like a betrayal of nature's kindness. Jack reached for the radio. Once again, he struggled internally. Natural selection was his professional creed, but humanity was the creed of his heart. He took a deep breath, his voice steady but determined as it crackled over the radio frequency. "Base, this is Ranger Jack. I'm at Sector 4. I'm reporting a special case." He paused for a second to compose his emotions. "I'm standing with Nala. She is completely blind, exhausted, and abandoned by her pride. A hyena pack just passed by, but they didn't attack. I'm going to break protocol. I cannot interfere with a hunt, but I will not let a king die in the humiliation of thirst. I am requesting a rescue team and a vet immediately. I am bringing her to the end-of-life care center." A long, dramatic silence followed on the other end. The people at the base knew Nala, too. They understood the gravity of this request. Finally, the radio crackled back. "Copy that, Jack. We understand. The rescue team will be there in 10 minutes. Prepare everything to bring the queen home." Jack opened the car door and stepped onto the hot ground. He didn't dare get too close to avoid startling Nala, but he stood at a distance where she could hear his voice. "It's okay, old girl," Jack whispered, his voice as gentle as a breeze through the grass. "You've fought long enough. Now let me help you." The rescue team arrived quickly with the professionalism of a surgical unit. They administered a gentle sedative to Nala's shoulder. As her head sank into the grass, Jack touched her coarse fur for the first time in 12 years. It was hot and dusty, carrying the breath of a legendary life. As the rescue vehicle began to move, Jack felt a strange sense of relief. He knew he wasn't just saving an animal. He was saving a part of his own soul. A week later, the sweltering heat of the Kruger Savanna had been replaced by a cool breeze blowing through a quiet corner of the rescue center. Nala lay there, amidst soft green grass and under the shade of an old tree, where the sunlight was merely dappled spots on her pale gold fur. The sound of trickling water from a nearby fountain provided a soothing melody, a music she had likely never heard during her wandering life on the parched plains. Nala no longer had a strain to hear the footsteps of enemies, nor endure parching thirst. Jack stood quietly by the wooden fence, observing his old friend. The lioness looked serene now. Her body had been cleaned, and her old wounds no longer pained her. The veterinarian stepped up beside Jack, sighing with a sad smile. Her heart is very tired, Jack. All signs show she only has a few hours left. But the good news is she is truly resting. She doesn't have to fight anymore. Jack nodded, a sense of indescribable peace washing over him. He looked at Nala, this time not through binoculars or a windshield, but with the eyes of kindred spirit. He realized that bringing Nala here wasn't about clinging to a life that had run its course, but about giving her one final gift: serenity. People often call it death with dignity, and that is exactly what Nala had. She wouldn't pass away in a bloody battle under the teeth of hyenas, nor would she die alone in the dust. She would close her eyes under the gentle care of those who truly valued her existence. The story of Nala was later retold throughout Kruger as a legend of compassion. The hyenas taught us a lesson about respect for a fallen king, and Jack taught us that sometimes love is the highest law of life. We don't save an animal to change the whole world, but for that animal, the world is changed forever. As the sun began to set, painting a corner of the horizon in deep pink, Nala let out one long, light, and graceful breath. She closed her eyes, this time to enter an eternal sleep where her eyes would be bright again and she would run once more across the endless grasslands of memory. Jack stood there until the first stars appeared in the dark sky, whispering softly into the wind. Sleep well, Nala. Your reign has ended, but your story will live forever in our hearts. If this story touched your heart, please share it as a reminder that kindness is a universal language, even in the heart of the wild. Subscribe to the channel to continue searching for human light in the most unexpected places. Do you have a Nala in your life? Someone who fought bravely and deserves the utmost respect? Leave a comment below. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Farewell, Queen of the Savannah.